can grasp the miracles of design and masonry destroyed. Today, as never before, the work of restorers reveal those secrets. The damage from Venetian cannons would be compounded by 2 centuries of neglect and cultural looting. Some of the marble was even crushed to turn into cement. But at the turn of the 19th century, a revival of interest in classical architecture and ideals brought the Acropolis to cultural prominence once more. Aristocratic tourists from Northern Europe visited the site in increasing numbers and helped themselves to hundreds of carvings and marble fragments as souvenirs. In 1801, the Turks granted the British ambassador, Lord Elgin, permission to salvage artifacts from the site. Elgin took them at their word and set about the mass transportation of the Acropolis back to Britain. The pediment sculptures, cavalry friezes, and Battle of the Centaurs were the prize pieces of his collection. The transportation alone cost Lord Elgin £75,000, the equivalent of £3 million today. He hired an Italian landscape painter, Giovanni Battista Lucieri, to remove the sculptures for him. Lucieri's letters revealed the brutality underlying Lord Elgin's supposed rescue mission.
I should require 3 or 4 saws 20 foot in length to saw a great bas relief that we could not transport unless we reduce its weight. Happily, it broke in the middle in a straight line at a place where there was no work.
Here on the ground we found some remains of the back of the sculptures from the area of the Zoophoros that Lord Elgin take from the monument. And here you can see how he cut the sculpture, a thick, not a very thick slab, due to the transportation, difficulties of the transportation of that period. So they used saw of this kind, pouring sand in the gap as they are moving. And they cut it both sides and they break it finally.
The damage caused by Lucieri has more recently been compounded by well-meaning but inexpert archaeologists. In 1902, restorers decided to replace the metal securing clamps that had survived for centuries. The 20th century replacements were supposed to be a preemptive protective measure, but in fact they corroded within decades, cracking the marble they were attempting to protect. This act of folly reveals the high quality of ancient metallurgy. The ancient clamps were the combination of 2 different strengths of iron, beaten together and then coated with lead to prevent corrosion, a level of artistry the restorers of 1902 had failed to match up to. Today, Nicholas Togonidis and his team are replacing the 20th century corroded clamps with titanium versions. These new clamps will not rust and have exactly the same breaking strain as the ancient Greek originals. When put under pressure by earth tremors, the clamps will break and not the marble. In another flawed restoration project, an archaeologist dismantled this column to repair its cracked surface. On completion, he replaced the drums in the wrong order, destroying their original beauty in the process. Such badly conducted restorations have forced today's archaeologists to evaluate every stone on the Acropolis site. More than 70,000 pieces of marble have been catalogued, and restorers now believe they know where each piece fits. And the more they understand about the Acropolis, the more the genius of its original builders is revealed. 1,000 nameless artisans who created this unique monument entirely by hand and without the use of mortar or cement. To preserve the buildings, restorers must match that precision, an endeavor that pushes modern technology to its limits. Plaster casts are made of broken sections. From these casts, exact copies of the missing pieces are carved by machines, which then produce the 3D mirror image in marble. Where machines fail, they must resort to carving by hand. Laboriously, a perfect fit is created, and another piece of the Acropolis jigsaw fits into place. Such restoration work is fighting a losing battle to the greatest threat the Acropolis has ever faced. Lord Elgin, cannon fire, the sensibilities of Christian and Muslim cleric pale in significance when compared to the destructive power of acid rain. Nowhere is the impact of this man-made disaster more powerfully revealed than in the destruction of the temple of Athena Nike. Encased in scaffold, the temple is simply disintegrating as acid rain dissolves the marble. The temple of victory is now an eerie temple of defeat in the face of man's poison. Restorers are undecided as to how the damage can be halted. Some propose covering the entire site in a thin layer of silicon, but the long-term effects of this drastic measure are unknown, and for the time being the stones of the Acropolis remain exposed. Each year, another layer of history is washed away. If the impact of acid rain is not solved soon, the Acropolis will be lost forever.
I think it's probably its sublime quality that gives us a kind of pause and to know that we are within this very romantic, wonderfully proportioned, perfectly constructed artifact of man that today haunts us.
No one was more aware of this opportunity for a place in history than Pericles himself. Addressing the mourners of Athens' war dead, he justified their sacrifice as follows.
These men, your sons and husbands, are dead. But look at what they died for. They died for Athens. And what is that but a city which uniquely calls upon its people to be citizens, not subjects, which celebrates philosophy, science, and reason, and which allows its people to live well while exercising both their duty and right to be fully human. Future ages will wonder at us, even as the present age wonders at us now.